Here. John Stewart here.
Here.
Mary Boyer here. Bob Eichner. Bob Maluna. Here. Kevin McClellan, absent with notice. Diane Salter.
Here.
Dr. Outlaw.
Here.
And here.
Okay, and if we go stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I need to thank Sam for having a great turnout, and just to remind people of a couple things, protocols. First of all, and the second part is just anything else that's not made necessarily on the agenda. So if you want to say something, make sure you sign up. But again, first part's on the agenda / action items. The second part is, I call it more the free-for-all. And anything that you feel like we want to hear, I guess. Okay, next I have is our Brandon High School student report. Ashley and Bailey, what's going on?
Alright, so right now NHS is selling candy grams at the high school for $1 for Valentine's Day.
And then student council is doing smoothie grams, and we're partnering with Tropical Smoothie for Valentine's Day also.
We just had our snow coming, so the game we played Owasso and we beat them. And then our snow coming queen was Emmy Henningsen and the king was Connor Burke.
Lake Crew is hosting a preview day for the 8th graders, so they come over for a day and they get like a tour of the high school and they play games and they get to know some of the teachers. So that's coming up this week.
We're partnering with Holly for autism awareness. We're having a game, so we're selling t-shirts and
We're gonna have like a spirit week for it, like a blue week, and so there'll be a couple spirit days in there for autism awareness.
but that's it.
Don't you guys have a big event tomorrow night at the high school? Is it the expo?
Oh, exploration day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's
that's when
going on too.
Is it the 8th graders? They encourage the 8th graders to come, the
Mhm.
families
Yes.
to come over and they get to see that. So it's a big event over there at the high school.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have our school showcase. It's the Harvey Swanson Elementary Positivity Project.
Okay, well, this is the Harvey Swanson month to be the school showcase. If anybody doesn't know, each month during the school year, a different school is chosen to do a showcase. So we all pick something that's a point of pride, or sometimes we have students show things. The thing that we're going to show from Harvey Swanson, I'm Andy Phillips, I'm the principal there. I'm here with Jenny Gieselman, who's a kindergarten teacher, and Mary Beth Pinter, who is a 2nd grade teacher this year at Harvey Swanson. So we're just going to tell about the Positivity Project, which is something that we've gotten into this year. A lot of Harvey Swanson students here too. You can ask them about it. Okay, so the way that this all started, so really this Positivity Project is a really new nonprofit kind of like movement in the United States, started by a couple of former members of the United States Army, one of whom went to West Point. I found out about it a couple of years ago. I knew I wanted to participate in it, and I knew that this year was going to be the year. As we'll get into just a little bit later, the program is free, essentially. The only cost is the cost of training, and only 2 people that went to the training were Mrs. Tomei, who is our behavior interventionist, and me. And the thing that really hooked me when we went to the training was this slide here, which kind of shows the reason that we really need to focus on this thing called positive psychology, which is basically thinking about what you're good at and thinking about what you want to get good at with these 24 different character traits that the Positivity Project represents. So what they showed us in this training was that over the last 40 years, 35 years, there's been an increase in narcissism and a decrease in empathy. And I think a lot of that went right along with the whole trend of us all being buried in our phones and us kind of just being in a world of our own. So the Positivity Project kind of represents this thing called Other People Matter, which means that everything that we do has an impact on somebody else. Even as we're just sitting here today, the way we're sitting here and listening or participating or leading, it impacts the other people around us. So here's just a really quick clip. It's not going to work, which is great. It's quite all right. Something we like about the program is the messaging is fantastic. Our teachers will talk about that a little bit later today. It's flexible. They stress that it's not a program. So Each week we get a different character trait, and the teacher can talk about that character trait in any way he or she wants to. The Positivity Project does provide lots of different resources that are really pretty engaging. But really, I think what the most powerful thing is what the conversation is after it gets talked about. It's every day in class, anywhere from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. I talk about it on announcements every morning, what that week's character strength is. So it's flexible, it's free. I really think that that's great. If you know anything about character development programs, not many of them are free, and in fact, many of them are phenomenally expensive. There are lots of other great ones out there, but this is a really cool one, and it doesn't cost anything except for the training, which we're already done with. And it's growing, so we're pretty early on in the implementation phase for the Positivity Project. If anyone knows of anyone in Grand Blanc, they got it started a couple of years ago, and they're really big into it. A lot of surrounding areas in Michigan are getting into it too, but it's growing, which is really exciting to be in on something pretty early. So here's a picture of the different character strengths that there are 24 of them. Sometimes they get more than 1 week in school. Most of the time they get 1 week. This week's character trait is love. Very appropriate for Valentine's week. And as our teachers just talk about what they like about it, the way that we trained our staff was we just took character traits from the Positivity Project. Each different little group got assigned a few traits, and we went around the town of Ortonville and demonstrated those as we learned about them. So as they talk, you can kind of look to see how we represented those different strengths. So what do you guys like about the Positivity Project?
So one thing I can say is that I teach kindergarten, and even the vocabulary is sticking with some of the kids. I had a parent that actually came to me the other day, and she said, "Have you been talking about the word perseverance?" And I said, "Yes, we actually have." And she said, "My daughter was working on something the other day, and she was having to work really hard on it, and she said, 'I'm using perseverance, Mom.'" So like even the kids are starting to use vocabulary, and it's just it's something to start our mornings out with every day. The materials that they provide, actually, the videos that they have, are absolutely great for young grades and prompt a lot of conversation, and I think get them thinking. And it's something that we can use when we're also in the moment of problem solving. You know, we can bring up the character trait. At this moment, what could we do? You know, what could we use to help us through this problem? So it's working really well.
Like Jenny said, I love that it's not necessarily a coin program, but it offers a lot of resources, and it goes day 1 through 5. So if you just wanted to click on the slide for that day, click on the questions for that day, a sub can do it, anyone can do it who isn't familiar with the program. What I have found is that we end up using it in a lot of other ways. We use it for a writing prompt a lot of the time. We use it to make connections in our reading. The kids will come up to me and say, "They're talking about fairness in this book. We talked about fairness." And I'll say, "You're right, we did." So those are the nice things, is that it's really, really flexible. Free is obviously a great thing because anyone can use it without having to spend a lot of money. But I really love the fact that I can do as little or as much as I want with it. With the snow days, I don't feel like, oh my gosh, we missed it. I missed those days. We can't. I can go right back to them, incorporate them with the next week, and use that as a segue into the next week. But I love using it for writing prompts. The kids really love that. I have some great pieces on bravery and perseverance and fairness.
Yep, so that's kind of been the big thing, is to get used a lot in language arts classes. That's what one of the 5th grade teachers wanted me to make sure that was said, is a lot of students will bring it up during the language arts classes, and it's throughout all the grades. So it's really just, it's a very simple program that we like a lot.
Thank you. Thank you to Harvey Swanson. Good job, guys. Thank you. Okay, next we have the superintendent report, and this is like really positive.
I'm gonna ask the board to come forward with me, if you don't mind,
With the line here.
around here, we're gonna just line up and make a section. thank you so much for being here tonight. Really excited to for this next topic that we're going to talk about. We have students 3 times a year that take part in the NWEA test. This is a nationwide test that hundreds of thousands of students take. Students take the test at varying levels, and they are ranked on where they stand throughout the country. And I'm really excited. Earlier today we talked a little bit about some of the things we're doing with some of the kids that are struggling, but we're going to take a chance to talk a little about some of the exemplary students that we have here in Brandon. First off, we had 653 students in Brandon, that's from kindergarten through 10th grade, that took this test, that were in the top 25% in the entire nation. That is outstanding, 653. We had over 220 that were in the top 10% in the entire nation. Unbelievable. I mean, they were doing better than 90% of the students in the entire country. Tonight, we're going to recognize 26 students that not only were in the top 10%, they were in the top 1% of all students in the entire nation on the NWEA test. What an unbelievable accomplishment by these outstanding students. It's remarkable. It's a great badge of honor for Brandon. It's something that our families should be really proud of. The top 1% in the nation. So what we're going to do is I'd like to recognize each one of these outstanding students. And when I call your name, if you could walk forward, Mrs. Salter is going to give you a certificate, and I'm going to ask you to come back around and grab a seat. And at the end, I'm going to have you all come forward to do some pictures and do one last round of applause for you. So first off, from the high school, Kyra Berger, would you please come forward and accept your certificate? Next up, we have Caitlin Sakachi. Next, we have Robbie DeHaan. Next, we have Gracie Hine. Next, from the high school, we have Sailor Lavastel. Next, from the high school, we have Sarah Pesta. Next, also from the high school, we have Lane Petrowski. Next, we have Haley Solo. Next, we have Krista Spencer. Next, we have Erin Syerson. Next, we have Caleb Welch. Our next student, Nicholas Bradburn. Our next student, Aaron Downey. Next, we have Michael Ulrich. Next, we have Skylar Todd. Nathan Blackmere. From Harvey Swanson. Next, we have William Frohan. William Fruhan. Aaron Greer. Brian Hapcott. Dylan Lintz. Owen Rochester. Camden Stadkowski. Riley Swain. Patrick Bradshaw. Sean Dyer. And Russell Rosenbaum.
But you're not with the Harvey Sons.
Okay, if I can invite all of the honorees to come forward and join our board members for some pictures here. Love to have you come forward.
Put the tall guys out in front.
Here, turn around and face your mom, dad, family.
And parents, feel free to come forward and get pictures too.
Sure. Comments and questions on agenda business, there's nobody that signed up. But remember, we have a second timer coming up at the end of the meeting. So next I need an approval of consent agenda. Okay, and all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those, anybody against, say nay. Okay, I now need a informational discussion items. It's the finance report with Jan.
Yeah, hi. Tonight, the board will be asking to approve our ratification resolution for our 2018 refunding bond. We have Frederick Height here from Twin Law to answer any questions. But just a quick overview, this refunding bond will save the community, the taxpayers, $1.2 million, which adds to the other three refunding bonds for a total of over $17 million. So that's great news. What we did was one thing, kind of like we were between the house, we had a 4.82% interest rate that we were paying. We refunded that less than half to 2.37% out of the market. Those were the bids. So I'd like to give Frederick is here. If you have any questions, again, this is an agenda item for approval tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So, Jan kind of gave me a good intro. I'm Frederick Heidemann. I'm an attorney with Truman Law Firm. I'm bond counsel for the district. Jeff Souls actually is the one who did most of the work on this, but he has two other meetings that he had to go to tonight, and he actually is going to both of them. So he is Superman, but he's not Superman enough to make it to 3. So he had to pick me instead. So the bond issue that we're doing here is exactly the same concept as refinancing a mortgage. You have previously existing outstanding bonds. We are paying those off early and replacing them with lower interest cost debt. And so the refunding bonds that we are going to be issuing here at the end of the month to replace the old bonds are almost 2.5% lower in the true interest cost than the older bonds that you are refinancing. So that translates into a total net present value savings of about $800,000 that's saved. And that's not a general fund saving, that's actually directly to the taxpayers that they'll see reduced on their tax bills of what they would otherwise have to pay. That translates into about a 7.5% savings, which, to give you some idea, when we in the industry look at doing a refinancing like this, typically 3% is the threshold that you don't want to, if it's less than 3%, it's really not worth it. You more than doubled that here, and especially now in the current interest rate environment and the tax bill that lowered the corporate tax rate. When that happens, when the corporate tax rate gets lowered, tax-exempt bonds like these are in the bond market comparatively less valuable to taxable bonds. And so what we've seen is sort of a decreased interest in tax-exempt bonds for that reason. But in this one, you guys hit the mark pretty well with this. This is a really fantastic bond issue. So having given you all that and the numbers, the resolution that you have before you tonight, the purpose of this is to kind of close the transaction at the board level. You may recall back in December, you passed a resolution authorizing Dr. Outlaw to sign a bond purchase agreement with an underwriter if your financial advisor determined that the interest rate market and market conditions were appropriate to proceed with the financing. They were. The financial advisor did give that recommendation, and on the basis of that recommendation, Dr. Outlaw accepted a proposal from an underwriter, Raymond James, to purchase all the bonds, and then the underwriter is then going to, in turn, on the day of closing, redistribute all those bonds to mutual funds, bond houses, et cetera, the actual sort of end bond purchasers. The underwriter is sort of a necessary middleman, so the school district doesn't have to go out and find all these separate bond investors themselves. So that is the purpose of the underwriter. They are the original purchasers of these bonds, and that closing will take place on March 1. That's when that's all going to happen. So that's the purpose of the resolution. I'd be happy to go into further detail if anyone has any further questions. And I should point out too, also that those savings figures that I mentioned, those take into account all the costs of issuance. So our fee as bond counsel, your financial advisor fee, the fees you pay to rating agencies to get credit ratings on the bonds, publishing fees for the bond publications, etc. The escrow agent who's going to be handling kind of the mechanics of the actual refinancing, getting all the old bonds paid off. All of those fees are taken into account when that savings figure is calculated.
Anybody got any questions?
It's the same time frame from one bond to the other?
Yes. Yes.
So, I hate to ask the dark cloud question, but what's the downside?
Well, there really isn't one. I mean,
Excellent, I like that answer.
It's one of those things where if the opportunity presents itself, I suppose if there's any downside, it's just the fact that you cannot further refinance these funds. So this is going to be your last opportunity in kind of the chain of bonds, to refinancing. So the final maturity of these bonds is 2026. In the industry, you typically look at a 10-year call feature, meaning that after 10 years, you can then refund the bonds. Even if they're refunding bonds, you can refund the refunding bonds. That's not the case here because the maturities just don't go out that far. They don't even go out at 10 years. It's not even really a downside. It just kind of is what it is. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
No,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So this bond was originally voted in 1996. It was refunded in 2008, and then this is the 10-year. This is our first opportunity to visit at 10 years, and it will be paid off in 2026.
Very good.
Anybody else? Question? Great news. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for doing all this.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have the education report, character education, with Andy Phillips and David Wyatt.
It's up there.
Okay.
On the far left. Okay. The left, further. Right there.
All right, well, thanks for having me again today. Another reason I presented on the Positivity Project is because Dave and I, we led a committee. We wrapped up, I think, in late October, early November. A couple meetings, but Dr. Outlaw asked Dave and I to come up with some really simple things that we can push as a district for character education. So our purpose of this committee that we came up with here was, in conjunction with Brandon educators who live in the community, we will come up with district expectations of some basic behaviors and work toward granting those expectations. So our objective was to identify 3 to 4 specific behaviors we will teach and expect students to master at all levels. And then we were to begin thinking about a slogan or brand that these behaviors can belong to. So our committee members were made up of a sprinkling of administrators and then a lot of teachers that were invited because they live in the community, have students in our schools, and work in our schools as teachers. It was a really great committee. Everybody contributed some fantastic ideas. So we had 2 meetings. At our first meeting, we had this list of all these different really positive things that you can do, basically really good manners. Look someone in the eye, firm handshake, hold the door open for the person behind you, et cetera, et cetera. We had this huge list. We did a sorting. We ended up coming to some agreements. We basically ended up coming to the agreements that were kind of on this table here. The second meeting, we really kind of honed in on what those would be. But we had to keep coming back to what our task was, which was to come up with just 3 or 4, keep it really simple. We wanted to make, at many times in our couple meetings here, the group wanted to solve all the world's problems with good manners. Because you think that they're all equally valuable, they're all really important. But our task was, and our goal was to come up with these Brandon behaviors that we were going to agree on to teach at all different levels. So this is kind of where we left at the end of our, basically I think of our second meeting. And then, I like Twitter, so I got on Twitter, and I saw this thing, and it couldn't have been a week after we had our second meeting, and I thought that this is exactly what our task was. So I'm glad it came through my feed. This is from the Iowa State football team. So picture a Division I college football team. There are, 80-some players on the team at minimum, along with, graduate assistants and managers and everything else. And they all boil their whole code of conduct down to this one poster. And it was kind of really what we were after. I could always be heard saying please when asking for something. So a 340-pound offensive lineman, when the lunch lady gives him his Salisbury steak, is supposed to say please. And then when he gets a Salisbury steak, or his 5th Salisbury steak or whatever, he's supposed to say thank you. And then if someone says thank you, you say you're welcome. So I sent this out to our group for feedback, and immediately, bing, bing, everybody was kind of in the same thinking as I was. This is exactly what we were after. So I have the Brandon Code of Conduct for everybody here. And this is what our committee came up with what those ended up being a little bit more than 3 to 4 behaviors would be. But you can clearly see the inspiration came from that Iowa State football poster. So just to read them aloud, I can always be heard saying please when asking for something. When given something, I will always say thank you. Likewise, when someone says thank you, I will say you're welcome. If I do something that impacts someone negatively, whether it was intentional or not, I will say I'm sorry. To politely interrupt, I will say excuse me. When speaking to someone, I will make eye contact with that person. When there are others around me, I will hold the door open for those behind me. When leaving any school area, I will pick up after myself. So, going back to the table we had a couple of slides ago, you can see that it took this, which it's all great things, but it really simplified it and boiled it down. And this same table will show to junior kindergarten students as will show to a 12th grade English class. And then we're going to ask teachers to help hold students accountable for all these behaviors too. And if a student doesn't demonstrate those behaviors, we'll have posters, which I also have, throughout all of our schools, in our hallways. I did have a poster. Put your photo in that poster. It's the grand reveal behind your coat. So something like this, yep, we've partnered with Paramount Signs, who do a lot of sign work for us, and she came up with a couple of mock-ups. So in the next couple of months, we'll be seeing these throughout all of our schools, and starting tomorrow, we're having an administrators meeting. We'll talk about how we'll roll these out to teachers and what the plan is for getting them in all of our schools. So those are the next steps, print posters. And then the last thing we'll do is we're going to have one more committee meeting in the spring to talk about how it went, how it's going, how the rollout was. The rollout will have happened by then. And maybe to talk about what next steps are for character education and Brandon going forward.
Does this roll into the project Lead the Way to direction? Or
The Positivity Project or Project Lead the Way is more with science, technology.
Okay.
So the Positivity Project,
The positivity.
yes, that one, I mean, there are lots of different crossovers, but I really think that the whole task of this group was to talk about what the community, what kind of behaviors would emerge from a community discussion. That's why we had local teachers as part of the committee. So I'd say that these are the behaviors that committee, thought were the most important, and the ones that we can hold students accountable to, and the ones that I think that'll help them in life in general too.
Well, and I know too, bring up, because I did at the workshop, this Brandon 2025 character came up a lot about the kids and that they say please and thank you starting early on. I mean, these are the kids when they get to some of those our local establishments or if we're walking through town or whatever, but this just became real important to parents that were in the 2025.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why we were asked to get this going. And it's simple. I think it's something that's doable for us, and I think that it arms teachers with just an easy thing that they can hold students accountable for. Say please. You just got something. Say thank you. So.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Anybody got a question? Comment? Good job. Thank you. Okay, next we have our action items. Approval of the geophysics science. Do I have a motion?
Move that the Brandon Board of Education approve the geoscience course offered at the high school starting fall of 2018 as presented.
Or.
Okay, I know we discussed this in the workshop. Did anybody feel they need anything more said? Christy did a great job. So, anybody else? Okay, with no discussion, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any against, say no? Okay, do I have a motion for the approval of the high school STEAM discovery course?
Move that the Brandon Board of Education approve the STEAM discovery course offering at the high school starting in the fall of 2018.
Support?
Okay, and again, this was discussed in our workshop. Anybody here on the board have any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the STEAM discovery course being offered at the high school starting in fall 2018, say yes?
Yes.
Anyone against, say no, please? Okay, then could I have a motion for the approval of the 2018 refunding bond resolution?
I move the Brandon Board of Education approve the 2018 refunding bond resolution as presented.
Support.
Okay, and again, we just had that discussed with Frederick and Thune. Don, is it, or?
True.
True. Sorry about that. Any other discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor say yes? Yes. Anyone against, please say no. Okay, that passes too. Okay, we're going to check on citizens' input. Okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people that signed up. And just want to remind you that it's basically a 3-minute time limit. But I'm going to call Pat Pierce. Hi Pat, how are you doing?
Hi, thanks.
I guess I said your name, but if there's anything else you need to add,
Yes.
as parent in the district, or?
I do. I've
Or
lived
you
in-
are?
I have lived in the community for some time. I'd like to give these out first before I get started for
Okay.
each board member. Hi, my name is Pat Pierce. I'm the union steward for the bus drivers at Brandon Transportation. I've lived in this community for almost 30 years. I've been at Black Hawk for 27 of those years. All 3 of my kids have attended Brandon schools. 2 have graduated, 1 is still in the district. I would like to address the letter on efforts to reduce high transportation costs that Dr. Outlaw sent out January 31st to the Brandon school families.
you shift the mic over a little bit?
The back 2 pages are the letter that Dr. Outlaw sent out to the families that I will be addressing tonight. You also have a color-coded chart on the bus drivers. The letter was about efforts to reduce high transportation costs. So on January 16th, Transportation Supervisor notified the union bus drivers that the Board of Education gave Superintendent Matt Outlaw approval to send out requests for proposals, RFPs, to privatize transportation, bus drivers and mechanics. He wants to know why this is being considered, he states in his letter. He said he would like to dispel some rumors that our student population is stabilizing. This is a half-truth. We have lost and continue to lose students every year. We have lost 100 to 200 students continually since 2006, and we are projected to lose more students over the next several years. Dr. Outlaw says, there are no easy cuts, and the district is committed to implementing cuts as far as from the classroom as possible. Well, that is until we have nothing left to cut but the classroom. In his letter, he has a rumor control, and he has several questions or statements. And Dr. Outlaw's first one is, safety is not the district's top priority. He states it's false. It's another half-truth. Cost cutting is the highest priority. Safety takes a back seat to cost cutting when you hire contracted employees. No one cares for the students like the people who live in our community.
Again, Pat, I just want you to know you got 30 seconds.
Okay, so the next one was contracting employees can promises quality. He states it's false. Another half-truth. EduStaff is a payroll company that only pays our so-called contracted employees. Our contracted employees are governed and controlled by Brandon School policies and guidelines. They are not contracted employees that work for EduStaff. All substitute teachers, parapros, classroom assistants, interventionists, and several administrators are also paid through EduStaff payroll company. They too are Brandon employees.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay.
I got my 3 minutes.
All right.
Thank you. We will read this.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I promise. Joe Valenti. I think it was right. Said that right, Joe Valenti. Welcome, Joe.
Good evening.
And again, 3 minutes.
I'll try my best. I'm going to continue reading where Pat left off. I'm the Teamsters president of the local. My second time around here with these RFPs, this time unfortunately. It says drivers will lose their jobs, false. Another half-truth, drivers will lose their jobs. Contract companies do offer jobs to existing drivers without a pension plan, health care, reduced hours, and a lot of the times their wages are much, much lower because they get none of these other benefits. Drivers working through management companies brought in from other cities are not appropriately vetted. False. Brandon will not retain their 14 drivers. We do not want to be associated with a private company that puts profits ahead of the community's best interests. Refer to the attached list, which is they have, you do not. Half of the drivers can retire and go back to work. True, there are 8 transportation employees that can retire. That's partially true. Only 4 of the drivers and 1 mechanic, which is 5 total, can retire without taking a penalty. So if we're going to define what a retirement is, would you like to retire with a penalty? So let's define who is actually eligible to retire with full benefits. Brandon has not saved money because of outsourcing custodial staff. I'm assuming that was brought up to Matt, and that is really irrelevant to anything dealing with this at all. Custodial staff was done a long time ago when I first took over this district as the representative. The district is already outsourcing transportation as drivers retire, true. But again, it's a half-truth. EduStaff's a payroll company only. It's a non-for-profit transportation company. Transportation entered into an agreement during the contract negotiations in 2011 and 12. In these negotiations, which I was in with Lori McMahon, and I believe only 3 board members sitting up here were here, the reason why we agreed to EduStaff was to basically put myself out of a position here through attrition. So as every Teamster driver retires, you are replacing them with an EduStaff driver.
And Joe, you got about 25 seconds.
The only reason we agreed to this was for you guys to have a savings. If this was going to be an RFP and we're going to privatize anyways, why would I put that in agreement? Why would I negotiate myself out of a job with the district as a union rep? The reason why that's in there is because that was the agreement with the school board, that was the agreement with the superintendent, and that's what was signed for, was through attrition. And we just got done with negotiations in October. Think anybody mentioned deficits, loss? We can't afford this. We need to talk to you guys about taking cuts. Nope, not to me.
Thank you, Joe. And again, we'll break this.
You guys need to think long and hard about what you're doing.
And next I have Linda Van Hollenbach.
Hello, my name is Linda Van Hollenbach. I'm a tax-paying citizen of Brandon Township. I also happen to be an employee of the Transportation Department for nearly 20 years. I'm a little apprehensive about doing this, quite honestly, because I am an employee. But as a taxpayer, I feel I have the right to have my voice heard as well, employee or not. I'd also like to address some of these issues that have been stated. The companies that you're looking at for coming in to take over transportation are being referred to as management companies. Make no mistake about it, these are for-profit transportation companies with one goal in mind, to make a profit. Last year, the school district reached out to Oakland Schools, who are the experts in transportation, to see if there was anything that we could do to improve our transportation. I believe that they were told that our transportation department was being operated as efficiently as possible. There was nothing that they could do, and they indeed did not go forward with the study. 7 bus routes have been eliminated since Debbie Allen has become the director over the last, I think it's 5-6 years. Our buses are running full. Some of our routes are close to an hour long, but they are as efficient as possible. There is no downtime between. One of the items that was in there was contracting employees compromise quality. Dr. Outlaw felt that was false. I'm only going to speak to my experience in my building. The experience that we have is 2-part. It's stated that DM Burr saves the district between $500,000 and $600,000 every year. They are an outsourced, contracted, for-profit company. My only response to that is that you get what you pay for. And what I mean by that is our building is disgusting. It is disgustingly dirty. Our bathrooms are disgusting. We have grime on the walls. We have grime on the floors. Most weeks we have paper towels sitting out on the shelf because they won't fill the rolls. This happens with our toilet paper too. It may not seem like a big deal, but when this is day to day, you have to ask yourself, what is it exactly that we are paying for? We've had to tell them not to use the acidic cleaner on the toilet seats that they use to clean the bowls. People were getting burns on the backs of their legs. We have to send emails to request to have dead bugs removed out of light fixtures and thick cobwebs removed off of windowsills. We've requested multiple times to have DM Burr's supervisor come over and see what we were talking about. Last summer they agreed, yes, it's disgusting, yes, it's gross, yes, we will get it cleaned. All types of big equipment were brought over, and it sat in our lounge. No one knew how to use it, or it was broken.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Or it was broken. Finally, in September, we asked them to come clean it up and take it away because we have staff coming back. The second part to this is that our contracted bus drivers are through EduStaff. As Pat and Joe spoke to, they are trained in-house. They are held accountable by Brandon senior drivers. They have to follow Brandon transportation policies. That is not the case when you bring in a private company. Talking about people being able to retire and come back to work, I myself actually qualify for that. I could retire and come back to work for a private company. I'm not a bus driver, I'm the secretary in the department. My job is included in that RFP. What's not being stated is that I would have to take a 30% penalty in my retirement. Worked 20 years. I don't feel that I should have to take a 30% penalty for that.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
And now I have Gerald Durrell.
Good evening. My name's Rick Gerald. I am your head mechanic, and I'm the highest seniority employee in the transportation department. A few years back, we had evaluations, employee evaluations, and one of mine was, gee, Rick, you do a great job, blah, 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 and you are an asset to Brandon Schools and the transportation department. I'm an asset. I thought, wow, that's really awesome. I have worth. I'm something. I do my job, and my supervisor at the time, they appreciated it. Well, about a month ago, I was reading an article in the paper, and now I'm a problem. I'm like, wow, I'm a problem. Christmas time, bus broke down on M15. Bus driver calls, says, I've got a radiator leak problem, there's antifreeze everywhere, it's snowing out, it's on M15 just down the road. I get tools, jump in the truck, I run down there, put the bus back together, get everything squared away. There's still kids on the bus. The bus makes it to the school on time. I thought, awesome. That's awesome. I'm an asset. I did it. I got 30 years in. I will get 30 years in. I will be turning 60 years old, and I'm eligible for the MIP retirement through Brandon Schools, the ORS. The problem is, I'm 60 years old. Right now, if I was to draw my retirement, I would get what would be the equivalent of one paycheck through Brandon Schools. Well, I can't live on one paycheck from Brandon Schools. That's why I work year-round every month. I'm waiting to turn 62 to get my Social Security. So I also will be, cut loose or whatever. That's my plan anyway, and I'm sure everybody else has a plan, and you folks all have your retirement plans. I've got 3 words: quality, dependability, and trust. The people that I work with, that's quality. You guys have a quality transportation department. They're well-trained. They're good people. They're quality people. They're quality citizens. They've been trained in advanced training. They take physicals, fingerprinted, they're drug they've got drug testing. When you get down to dependability, there is no absenteeism in our department. When I tell you there's no absenteeism, there's no absenteeism.
Rick, thank you.
The third is trust.
Rick.
When those kids get on our buses,
Rick.
they trust us. 1 second, please. The kids, when the kids get on that bus, they say, hi, bus driver. They trust us. They don't run around and run off into the woods. And this is for everyone, especially for you guys, when it comes to trust. When you put your head on your pillow tonight, and you're laying there, the last thing in your mind is, are the kids at Brandon Schools going to get to school on time safely? Because you trust
Absolutely,
us.
Rick. And we
trust us.
yes, and I trusted you with the 3 beds, right? Okay, thank you. April?
Okay, I'm coming to the district as a parent. I'm also an employee as the district. My concern is in that letter that you wrote, it states that there's no cost, they don't want no cost taken out of the classroom and that they're trying their hardest to stay away from it. But when I was informed this year at the beginning of conferences from my daughter's science teacher that my daughter wouldn't be doing any dissecting this year because there was cuts made throughout the whole school district in the classroom, including the science program. I also pulled my child out of the district this year, my oldest child, because I have 4 children in the district, or I used to have 4 children in the district. I pulled my oldest child out of the district because I've been in this district since he was in 1st grade. My child is in 11th grade this year. Okay, I am not happy with you guys at all. Not at all. I pulled him out of the district because last year I pulled a meeting at the high school to discuss his education because he's part of the special education department, okay? I was told by the director, Ms. Bazant, why did you pull this meeting? Why didn't you just call me? Because I wanted to speak to everybody face to face and have a conversation with everybody that my child deals with on a daily basis. That was rude. That was uncalled for. That really, really threw me off. So I pull him out of the district this year. Take him up to Millington. Guess what? My child tested at a 3rd grade deep reading level. He's in 11th grade. Can you explain that to me? That means my child has not learned anything and has not made any progress since the 3rd grade when he worked with Miss Johnson. That really bothers me. Not only does it bother me, but my child, who's in 4th grade this year, my youngest in the district, I had tested last year because she's so far behind. Okay? They tell me she doesn't qualify for special education because she's not low enough. She's low, but she's not low enough. Okay? That really hurts because my child's already getting all the extra special needs that she can get in the classroom without being considered special education. So then I go to conferences beginning of the school year this year. Guess what happens? Her teacher is very, very concerned because of how far behind she is, and she's in 4th grade and she's testing at a 2nd grade level. So, again, contact Diane Bazant. Guess what happens? Can't test my child until the end of the school year this year because there's only allowed to be once a year testing. That's wrong. If my child is 2 years behind, don't you think you need to do something to see if there's a learning disability? On top of all the other health issues and complications that were during the pregnancy that I've explained over and over and over and over since my child has started school in this district. That's something you guys need to think about. You need to think about bringing the students back into our school district, okay? Because right now, don't cut me off. I'm a parent. Right now, you guys have seriously, all you're focusing on is all the students that are leaving this district. That's not fair. You need to start focusing on the students that are in this district and making them better learners and focusing on them and giving them better education, giving them more classes, and worry about pulling students into the district instead of worrying about where you're going to cut costs here and where you're going to cut costs there. Okay? Not only am I an employee of this school district, but, sorry, well, I have to go to you. I pulled an article from a citizen. You make $132,500, plus you get an annual $15,000 stipend. Okay? Your $15,000 stipend that you get a year is my yearly income. Okay? Our administration is the highest in the whole district that gets paid. Don't we think we need to make cuts in our administration costs before we make cuts in the lowest part of the district?
Okay, thank you. And next I have Denise Vanderbilt.
Hi, y'all. Denise Vanderbosch. I do not work for transportation. I'm just a parent in the district without any children in the school. So, but I just want to say that 10 years ago we outsourced our technology, and it costed us a couple $100,000 to bring them back. That didn't work. And they'll go into DM Burr because somebody already did, and I've been in a lot of the buildings, and they do look really bad. I am embarrassed to say that these are our schools now. They're filthy. As a substitute teacher, I know we pay the outsourced company, I think, about $120 for us, and we still only make $87 a day to sub. So that has never gone up, and it's not a really good company to work for, not like it was when we worked for Brandon. I just want to say that I think outsourcing is not the way to go. We have ways we can make money. We can be renting out the land. We can start thinking out of the box to make money as opposed to cutting people and getting rid of the transportation department, because we really need them. I would not want to put my child on a bus if it was an outsourced company, because they're really not proving to be very beneficial. So thank you. I don't want you to tell me my 3 minutes are up, so I'm going to go now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then I got Sarah and come on up.
So, I'm a parent. I'm also, I do accounting on the side, so I'm going to come at this from a different angle. Regarding this started because of the busing. I think we all feel how we do as parents and as the community, but I'm going to come at it at a sideways angle here. I looked over your financial statements of your 2017 year, and I have major questions, and not only have I looked it over, but I've had another mom who is a parent who actually is an accounting major as well. You have a 15% in your sinking fund with 1.2 assigned for the waste management, which looks like we might not need. And then you have another, oh, let me get it here. 2.272, 574 amount that's unassigned, which should be used for the improvement projects. When I was at the last meeting, you talked about the Harvey roof, which was $500,000, which sounds like because you went on one opinion of a biased roofer, we didn't even need much less. We're going to have that savings. So that's $500,000 in savings right there that it sounds like it's leaning towards. So why we're having a busing and cutting of that issue, I'm not sure. The state mandates that you have 5% in your reserve. You guys have 15. If you lowered that to 10, you would still have a lot of money left, and you would have $1.2 million that you could work with. So if you looked at your fatted calf and pulled it down, that would help. You also had 10 budget line items of expenses last year that you overestimated on. That was money that really, you started off thinking in the budget and you were off. Your job is to do a tight budget, not a fatted budget. It needs to be tight. You have $84.1 million in capital assets. I certainly hope that you have gone down every piece of furniture, equipment, building, land, anything that is part of that $84.1 million to see what is needed, not what is wanted, what is needed, and what can be sold before you start touching employees. And I'm not just talking busing because I have a feeling this is going to be a waterfall, but I'm talking everyone. So until you make sure that that's taken care of, I believe that cutting from employees is unnecessary. I would also like to know if you have an actual calculation of what BFIS and Bel-An has in maintenance and costs that run it every year, and I would certainly hope that that exact amount is deducted from your budget line items for next year and not just heavily estimated or not estimated in there at all because it has not closed yet. I would also like to see that any improvements come from the fatted 15% reserve fund, because on page 8 of your financial statement, it specifically says that that unassigned amount is supposed to be used for your building improvements. These are your words, not mine. So any sales from BFIS or Bel-An, I would certainly hope would go back into the general fund, and any improvements that you need to make can come back over from your 15% revenue, which is 10% over what the state has. I would also like to remind you that if you are a board member and you do not have a student, you need to talk to us. We did not vote you in here to look at just numbers. We voted you in here to be our voice. And if you are not speaking for us, you are not looking in the right direction. Please do not come up here to think that you're only looking at numbers. I invite you to come to all of our PTA meetings, and specifically if you do not have kids and you're not talking to parents on a monthly, weekly, or daily basis, it's time, because we have a lot that we want to say, and you guys are our voice, and we expect you to represent what we want.
Thank you, Sarah. This is like a full audience that we finally get, and for months we talk over a lot of things. And first of all, we have made zero decision on this. I just accept for to get some information. That's the only thing that we've asked for. You know, second, and I'm just going to refer to when the budget came up. It's not just about this year. It's about looking into the future. We have to predict. And I wish we say we were getting this every year, but it is an ever-evolving situation going on. And you mentioned if we could take the sale of BFIS and put it right into salaries and all that kind of stuff, we would do that in a heartbeat. By law, we can't. We can't do that. We just can't do that. And then, so our decisions, yes, they're based upon what we know of the community and what we've been for sitting here for whatever number of years, but it's also based upon what Lansing and the federal government and our laws have dictated the direction. We sometimes don't have that say. We have to do it. I came in here once saying we shouldn't vote on something, and Jan or somebody looked at me and says, you'll get thrown in jail. if we don't vote this in. I don't know if you remember that one time, and I said, oh, I guess I'm voting yes then. I mean, we have no choice. We are all community members here. That is it. Do we all have kids? No, but we bring in, I guess, some expertise.
Diane, you did have kids.
Did you?
There are kids coming through the
Yeah.
You have kids now.
Yes, I do.
They just happen to not be.
They're just not in the school district.
Current voice
Yeah.
is important as well, though.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's what we look for, is having that variety.
It is
sitting there.
true, as
Absolutely.
there's an evolution of terms, right, people are on and then their kids graduate, so we can't cut a term midway through and then bring somebody else on, and so it is a little bit, I definitely hear what you're saying,
I do too.
but there are some facts surrounding the issue of having a full board, all of whom have kids in the district, is, especially given the interest of or lack thereof.
And that wasn't what I
running
was
for this
implying.
position.
I don't think that every board needs to have a child. I think every board member needs to hear us, though. And I would like to see you at PTA meetings. I would like to see you at events, and I'd like to know that if I run into you in the street, we all will know your name because you're our voice.
And absolutely, and in fact, I brought that up to Dr. Outlaw at one of my first meetings in January. I was on the PTO at Fletcher. So for me, it was even heartbroken. In fact, where's Denise? I looked at Denise and Mary Ann, the three of us ran that PTO for a couple of years. There she is. Denise taught me everything. So, but you know, I see some of you guys at BKs, gals at BKs, and chit chat, and I love saying hello. You know, absolutely, all of us. We talk about who we will run into. I think I heard soccer's and sporting events. I mean, we do, and you're absolutely right. That's on my list. I'm going
And
to.
we love this attendance at every meeting, to
Yes.
see your faces here as well, that would be fantastic. We
And
welcome it.
yes, and these decisions are not the easiest in the world. It's just having that budget and being able to pay anybody and everybody. I wish we got more money. I know there's talk about more money coming this way, but whether it gets passed or not. But everything was heard. We will read this. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to say. Okay, I now need a motion to go to closed session.
I move the Brandon Board of Education approve the closed session for the purpose of discussing discipline.
Okay, and all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Anybody opposed? Okay, it's 7:38, let's give it 3 minutes.